marijuana. And this is marijuana. But this is also marijuana.
Marijuana is the third most widely used drug in the world. Cigarettes, alcohol being 1 and 2.
You might know it as weed, hemp, cannabis, or pot. But regardless of what you call it, marijuana is a drug, and one that a lot of people have experimented with.
I got high on weed because I thought that I would fit in with everybody.
It took my focus away. It became more important to me than a lot of other things.
Everything revolved around smoking pot for the last 15 years, everything.
I had no concept that this was going to cause me such a problem.
If there's one sure thing about marijuana, is that people often give mixed messages about its use. Some say it opens the door to horrible consequences, while others tout its medicinal benefits. So, what is it about marijuana that makes people take the risk?
You know, smoking pot was fun. You weren't allowed to do it. It was illegal.
It looked cool, and I wanted to smoke it, and the first couple times, I loved it.
Liked it because everyone else was doing it, and so much fun and all that kind of stuff.
That was only like a weekend thing, once in a while. Then I got into high school and it turned to every day smoking pot because he was trying to be in the in crowd, you know what I mean?
Ah, the being social thing. Keeping up with the crowd. You probably heard that one before. The truth is that many view marijuana as being no big deal and treat the use of the drug pretty casually. Unfortunately, that's not the whole story.
I guess the biggest misconception about marijuana is that it's not a dangerous drug, that it can't take over someone's life, lead to a lot of wasted years and potential.
I smoked pot because it took me out of myself.
I was very lazy, like I didn't want to do anything.
Marijuana, like any other drug, is about getting outside yourself. It's about living in denial of your emotions, living in a slightly alternate reality.
Adolescence is a time for all of emotional turmoil, either anxiety about do I fit in, or depression if I don't fit in, or I'm just generally unhappy, or I have stress at home. Marijuana can be somewhat effective to kind of blot those feelings out.
So, is marijuana a harmless kick or an evil weed? Surprisingly, this debate hasn't always been in play, as prior to the 20th century, marijuana was used for far different reasons. As a word, marijuana is less than 100 years old, but cannabis, the plant from which the drug is harvested, is probably older than civilization itself. The ancient Chinese used its tough fibers to make hemp for rope, while wood carvings found in medieval monasteries reveal that Christian monks used the hemp fibers from the cannabis plant to make early forms of paper. 17th century sails were made from cannabis fiber, giving us the word canvas. And when Thomas Jefferson wrote the first draft of the Declaration of Independence, the paper came from the fibers of the cannabis plant. But it wasn't until the 20th century that cannabis was given the street name marijuana by Mexican farm workers. Until 1937, marijuana was often legally prescribed as an herbal sedative, but some were discovering its recreational uses, and that prompted some rather, well, extreme reactions.
Marijuana is an unspeakable scourge, the real public enemy #1. Its first effect is sudden, violent, uncontrollable laughter. Then come dangerous hallucinations, the loss of all power to resist physical emotions, leading finally to acts of shocking violence, ending often in incurable insanity.
Violence? Insanity? Teenagers running crazy all because of marijuana? It may seem a little outlandish, but while this propaganda film was made in 1937, concerns over the dangers of smoking marijuana are still around today, and for good reason. Marijuana. What exactly does it do? How does the drug get people high, and what are the side effects?
Predominantly, it enhances pleasurable experiences.
Produces some feelings of, kind of giddiness or relaxation. Things seem funny.
One of the reasons that people find smoking rewarding is that it delivers an almost immediate effect after smoking, especially with the more potent types now available on the street.
The main ingredient in marijuana is THC.
Tetrahydrocannabinol is one of 200 active ingredients, the best known of 200 active ingredients in marijuana.
But if you smoke marijuana, THC isn't the only thing you're sending into your brain. There are hundreds of other chemicals being sent to the brain, all in a single puff. Many of them are toxic, and they're all hitting cells in the brain called neurons. Many of these neurons in the brain are where mind-altering drugs do their job. But we're not talking about just a few brain cells here. After all, there are as many neurons in your head as there are stars in our galaxy. That makes the brain the most complicated thing in the universe. And the effect that THC has on the brain and body is not always predictable.
The primary active ingredient, which is delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol, is absorbed through the lining of the lungs and very, very quickly gets into the bloodstream and then crosses from the bloodstream through the so-called blood-brain barrier and into the brain.
The nerve cells in the brain talk to each other with naturally occurring molecules called neurotransmitters. THC in marijuana interferes with the normal communication between brain cells. Some speed up, while others slow down.
We see changes on almost every level that's been investigated in the brain. We see metabolic changes, we see neurochemical changes, we see structural changes, and we see functional changes.
It produces long-lasting changes, even in casual smokers' brains.
We see pretty profound brain changes and pretty profound behavioral changes.
One of the studies, which has been very interesting, has been to look at the brain with so-called fMRI, with a magnetic resonance imaging machine that can actually see activity going on inside the brain while the person is trying to think.
When we look at individuals who've been smoking with brain scans, we see a number of different effects depending on when we look. When we look right after, within a day of their having smoked, we can see that parts of the frontal cortex, again, this executive system, are not functioning the way they do in individuals who are not smoking.
As you can see here, the non-user's brain expends little energy to remember something. That's not the case with someone who smokes marijuana. More energy is required to process what should be normal activity.
That is sustained for unknown periods of time after you stop marijuana. And the longer you keep it up, the longer that period continues.
When we look over at individuals who are heavy smokers who have been willing to stop smoking for 7 days or 28 days, interestingly, we're seeing that these brain regions are still affected.
There's a pronounced, measurable effect, loss of ability to remember, loss of ability to have your mind do what you want it to do, to concentrate on things.
I remember so little of that period because of smoking all the time. It really affected my memory.
It took away my motivation for one thing. It made me sleep more.
When used chronically, it really tends to sap people's motivation to achieve things.
Pot just made me feel really, in the end, all I can remember is really just feeling really sleepy all the time. Whenever I'd smoke it, I just want to fall asleep.
That's not so cool. But marijuana doesn't only affect the brain. When a person smokes, it's affecting the rest of the body as well. The effects of marijuana can be measured at a number of places in the human body, including the lungs, adrenals, bone marrow, tonsils, uterus, ovaries, and testes.
The way I like to think about marijuana when people say, what are the negative health effects? I think the one area we know the most about is its effects on the lungs and the respiratory system. We know that it produces the same kind of precancerous things that happen with tobacco smoke.
Certainly, it's not good to suck burning weeds down your throat.
So the stuff in the marijuana smoke is bad. It looks like tobacco smoke, and it's even higher. People estimate between 3 and 7 times more carcinogens in one marijuana cigarette than one tobacco cigarette.
Smoke of any kind is certainly not a good thing for the lungs, and marijuana smoke is no exception. At first, it opens the airways, but when used daily, marijuana smoke causes the airways to begin to close down again. That means daily smokers are likely to have more problems with wheezing, sinusitis, and bronchitis. Marijuana affects the heart in much the same way that stress does, since the drug makes the heart work harder. In males, chronic marijuana use even lowers sperm counts. And while there's no definite proof, early studies show that marijuana smoke increases the risk of lung, mouth, and throat cancers. After all that heavy news about marijuana, you may be wondering what the story is about claims that marijuana can be used as a medicine. The term medical marijuana is used pretty frequently these days. Some people believe that the plant has medicinal properties that can help people deal with various types of illnesses. Some states have even made it legal for a doctor to prescribe medical marijuana to their patients.
We now have an FDA-approved medication that's purely THC, and you can take in an oral form.
It's commonly thought that there are actually very good things about marijuana. Why? They use it in the treatment of glaucoma. They use it in the treatment of cancer. They use it in the treatment of AIDS wasting syndrome. It must be good for you. And there is a bit of truth to that. That is, one of the over 200 active ingredients in marijuana does seem to be an appetite enhancement.
If you have a problem with your appetite and due to some other medical problems, a doctor in some states, it is important that you know in some states, they will prescribe marijuana as a means to induce appetite.
One of those 200 ingredients does appear to be useful in expanding a visual field, which is why they give it to glaucoma.
But remember that people with legitimate medical problems are more interested in getting help than getting high. The main problem is that marijuana is not a modern medicine. It's not one drug, but hundreds of drugs, all having different effects at the same time. What the future may hold is the ability to isolate the one drug that helps the illness without causing the patient problems at the same time. But hey, these are ideas on the drawing board, not in the pharmacy. Besides the detrimental physical effects, there are plenty of ways marijuana use affects a person's mind. Sure, some might talk about how marijuana makes them feel relaxed, but unfortunately, that's not always the case.
Some people have a bad reaction, they have a bad high, they get very anxious or paranoid.
Sufficient quantities can lead to perceptual distortions.
I was very on edge, I was very nervous, I was very agitated with life, I was very agitated with people.
So, not everyone gets relaxed by smoking pot. In fact, some people can even have panic attacks. The truth is, marijuana affects different people in different ways.
The most immediate and long-lasting psychological effects of marijuana are lack of concentration.
It really affected my memory. And I can remember after I stopped smoking, I would just suddenly have these moments where I would remember things and just realize things that I couldn't realize before because I was always just in this haze.
Time moves on, it can become a morning to night thing where they want to maintain that feeling of being high, and that not being high becomes an uncomfortable state for them.
It's like those commercials you see where somebody's in their 30s and their mom's still telling them to get a job, nothing's changed, won't affect me. It happens. I mean, it really is addictive, and they just stay in that same mindset for 15 years.
I woke up and had a joint in my mouth. That was cool to me. I could say, oh, Ed's a pothead, he's great. His eyes don't get red no more, and it was just the whole rebel scene, being the cool guy, being the accepted guy, always had all the friends, always had pot on him.
I got to the point where I started hanging out with different friends, hanging out with the people who were smoking marijuana, who had marijuana. And yes, it took me away from my interests.
People wanted the drugs that I had, people wanted the alcohol that I had. They didn't want me, for me.
So you can think about drugs as having benefits and risks. With marijuana, we've seen why some people get high and how medical specialists hope that some ingredients in marijuana can help certain kinds of illnesses. But you have to be honest. Marijuana causes impaired memory, apathy, paranoia, and decreased motor control. There's also a growing concern that marijuana, like tobacco, may cause cancer in tissues that come in contact with smoke. And dependence on any drug is nothing anyone hopes for. Smoking marijuana will not give you better shots in basketball or give you higher scores on the SATs. In fact, if you're stoned, marijuana makes your mental and physical performances worse.
This picture that you see in the movies and the popular literature of the dull, Dumb and Dumber guy who's been smoking dope is real.
I would smoke a blunt and I would go into school that day and I would take like a math test or something and I'd be like, yeah, I aced it, you know, and it would come back and it'd be like a 0. And I just didn't know what was going on in school because I was always dazed out or not paying attention.
I was always thinking about cutting classes, getting out to smoke a jazz, we used to call it.
My grades really went down. Like, you could see the difference. I was an AB student when I was like 11 years old, and in a year I was D's, and in another year I was straight F's.
You can see from my freshman year to my senior year, I went from a 3.5 to a 1.7.
You start to do the drug instead of other things. So you're getting high, and when you're high, you don't feel like studying, you don't feel like going to work.
I was playing sports before that point, and I stopped playing sports, stopped doing things I enjoyed, hobbies and things like that.
And I didn't have a lot of motivation. I just wanted to stay working at a bar and partying all the time. And I'm paying for that now.
Marijuana isn't physically addictive like tobacco or heroin, but for some kids, it can be psychologically addicting, which is almost as bad. Think about it. If getting stoned is a way of life, there's no room left for any other part of life.
When we put ads out, would you like help with marijuana? We get plenty of people that say yes, that perhaps didn't seek treatment before because they feel like marijuana, our society still makes marijuana be this weak drug that you can't really have problems with.
For some people, it ends up being a problem because they use it in a long-term way to kind of manage their emotional experience.
And it used to be even in treatment centers, if you said I had a marijuana problem, they'd kind of scoff at you and say, what?
There are over 5 million people in the United States today who are heavy daily users of pot and who are addicted to it.
It tends to infiltrate someone's life in a very insidious and kind of slow-moving but difficult to resist manner. And then once it's there, kind of camped out in your front yard, it doesn't want to leave.
Daily marijuana use certainly produces a withdrawal syndrome.
Somebody who smokes marijuana very regularly, meaning probably daily or almost daily, and perhaps multiple times a day, when they stop smoking, they seem to experience very similar things to what people experience when they stop smoking tobacco.
For every intoxicating phase, there's a almost equal and opposite withdrawal phase, and the same thing's true with marijuana.
So if you're a tobacco cigarette smoker, we all know that people get irritable and nasty and might have some sleep problems and their appetite changes. We seem to see all those kind of things with marijuana, including some anger and aggression increases.
When they try to stop smoking after a long period of time, by about the third day, they just get irritable and itchy and agitated, and the temptation is very great to light up another joint and resume smoking.
Just the act of getting high, that escape from reality, was addictive. If I got high a couple times a day, I'd want to get high again.
It's so easy to get and it's so available today that, it can lead to anything else.
This thing about gateway drugs, there's truth to it. Because once you get a get high mentality, which means I like getting high, it's no big thing to leap to another thing that gets me high.
I smoked it so much that eventually it started to get a little boring for me. It started to get a little bit like, oh, okay, it's predictable, I know what's going to happen. And I did start asking my boyfriend at the time, is there anything else that we could do?
After a while, the pot was okay, but it wasn't getting me high like I wanted to be high. So I had to move on to the pills.
I definitely think smoking pot is a gateway drug. I don't know many people who just right off the bat did crack or did heroin.
The fact is that the vast majority of people who end up using harder drugs will report that they started out using marijuana.
And one of the most challenging things about working with people who are abusing drugs is, and this is the bottom line thing, I like getting high. And that's it. I like getting high. But you got to get in touch with the consequences of what happens after you get high.
One of the dangers of mixing marijuana with other drugs or alcohol is the most obvious one, namely impairment in coordination, in reaction time, and in judgment.
From simple motor skills to concentration to focus to driving, it's across the board.
In much the same way that alcohol impairs your concentration, marijuana will do the same. And drinking and driving or smoking and driving are both equally dangerous.
Actually, we had a fatality where it involved no alcohol at all, but the kid was high on marijuana.
One thing is for certain concerning pot. It's against the law to use it, against the law to possess it, and against the law to sell it, too.
Kids many times get into doing some other types of negative activities like shoplifting, selling some of their own stuff, stealing from their parents or others just to, be able to purchase a bag.
I would steal off my family, my little brothers, over my grandma, always lie. I was always a good manipulator.
I'm 17 years old. I gotta steal car batteries so I can get high.
Many of the kids we see in our clinic have gotten, quote, busted at school. So something happens at school, they find them with marijuana, and it is an illegal substance and not allowed in school, and thus there's consequences.
If someone is caught with marijuana for the first time, they're going to face a heavy fine and possible jail time.
Marijuana laws vary from state to state, but all states carry serious penalties for marijuana offenders. Some even carry what's known as mandatory minimum sentencing, which requires repeat offenders to serve jail time.
In some cases in our country, people have gotten quite severe prison sentences for what might seem to be relatively minor drug offenses.
If they're selling marijuana or they're caught with marijuana repeatedly, then the fines and the punishment's going to increase.
And whether you serve jail time or not, a marijuana conviction does not look good on a college or job application. But what about states that have already legalized marijuana for medical use? There, the penalties for marijuana use are harsh as well.
Marijuana is illegal. You can go to jail for it. Now, you may say, that's not fair, that's not right. Fine, it's still the law.
The fact is, marijuana affects the way a person thinks, feels, and acts. You need to weigh if the risks are worth it and how much you value having a clear head. In the end, the choice to stay clean or smoke marijuana is yours.
Today, the job market's tough. School's tough, and we all need all the advantages we can have. Using marijuana puts us at a disadvantage.
Life is so real that you don't have to smoke a joint to see what's going on.